Since Honkai Star Rail launched on April 26 of 2023, millions have played this game, and at this point, I'm certain most if not all players would have put on some limited banners by now, and you may be familiar with the dreaded feeling of losing your 50-50. But what if I told you some of these units are really good for your account and it would actually be a blessing to have them? Hey guys, Mr. Pokke here, back with another video, and today we will be discussing all of the standard 5-star units in the game, talking about their capabilities and usage, and also who should you pick for the 300 selector. Leave a comment on who's your favorite 5-star unit and let me know if you guys would like me to go through the standard 5-star alike cones. But without further ado, let's get into today's content. So, to no one's surprise, Bronya is still our quintessential 5-star unit, not just being the only 5-star harmony unit until Run May is released, but also the only unit to have an extra turn mechanic. Now, I cannot stress enough how amazing extra turn is in a turn-based game, and time again, Bronya has proven to be the best in slot support for quite literally every single DPS unit that we have, the only exception being Clara. But even for Clara, it's not that bad since the attack percentage and crit damage buff are all very useful to Clara. Bronya is also one of the only few supports that can pull off being relatively slower, sticking to only 134 speed to be paired with a 135 speed DPS for a massive damage output on the very first wave. Now, of course, Bronya is not without weakness, as her skill point consumption is one of the highest among all of the support units that we have right now, so players definitely cannot spam her skill every single turn aimlessly. While obtaining her Idolin 1 and Signature 1 helps with this issue greatly, learning to time her skill usage will greatly improve a player's playing experience. To find out more about Bronya, kindly check out my Bronya analysis as well as her speed tuning content. If you guys manage to get yourself a Bronya while losing a 50-50, it is honestly considered a win. Have you ever wanted to own your very own Kafka dress-up doll? Well, look no further. Hey guys, Mr. Pokke here, back from the future, and today's sponsorship is going to be Honkai Shop, one of the largest Honkai Star Rail fan merch shop that we've seen so far. You guys can see over here, they have a very wide variety of figurines, toys, keychains, even keyboard featuring Kafka's mechanical keyboard for the entire set, and also lots of other goodies like Yanqing's dress-up doll if you guys are into that instead of Kafka. We also have Jingliu's dress-up doll, or the version is not really out yet, and we also have lots of very cute keychains, plushies featuring Blade, Imbibitor Lune, Luocha. They also have acrylic stands, light cone stands for you to display in your room. And if you guys are interested in any of these merchandises, feel free to use my code Pokke to have a 10% off your final purchase order. That is going to be code Pokke for 10% off your final purchase order. Once again, thank you Honkai Shop for sponsoring today's video. Up next are two units that some players may still be underestimating till this day: Clara and Gepard. Now let's talk about Clara first, as she's one of the tankiest DPS units we have even among the limited banner units, and it is extremely comfortable to use her. For a beginner's account, her usage is quite literally better than even Bronya in the face of a lack of resources to horizontally invest into multiple units. Players who got Clara early will know this feeling, right? You dump every single possible stamina into raising Clara's levels, light cone levels, tracers, and getting some of the right main stats for Clara, and you can easily breeze through the entirety of the main story, Simulated Universe, and even the earlier stages of Memory of Chaos for at least the side with Clara. In case people forget, she is also one of, if not the first units to solo Simulated Universe at the highest difficulty back in the days, further adding to the testament of Clara being a beginner account's godsend. The key to Clara's strength lies in her being reactive to enemy actions, and players don't have to care about speed tuning, buffs or debuffs timing, and as long as you can keep the team alive as well as Clara alive, it is just a matter of time before the enemy dies, since very little mobs have actual consistent sustain. I am looking at you, Abendir. Oh, and just in case players get a ton of Claras, she has one of the best Idolin 6 in the entire game, where she basically counters whenever anybody in your team gets hit with a 50% base chance, right? And as for Gepard, he is still one of, if not the best sustained units, even after the release of Luocha, Fu Xuan, and very soon Huo Huo. Although it is not as comfortable as limited sustains, he can definitely hold his his ground and keep the team alive for most content, even by himself, right? You do not need a secondary sustain. There's this misconception that you need to run Gepard with a healer because he only provides shield. This is definitely not the case, because once a player get him the right main stats, being a defense percentage chest, a defense percentage sphere, a speed boots, and an energy regeneration rope, then Gepard's shield will be so thick that the mobs will likely not even penetrate it before the shield is up again. Another key feature of this kit is that he has an increased built-in taunt value. Now, I'm not sure if Gepard users have noticed, but you don't really face the issue of your teams catching strays like damage snipes or crowd controls, since Gepard is the one most of the time absorbing everything. If you manage to get Gepard, you're pretty much set for sustain on at least one team for a really long time. Now, after those 3 units, the remaining standard pool 5 stars, they are not to say are absolutely unusable, right? The Curse of Himeko, Curse of Yanqing, this is not the case. They all hold their weight against limited 5 stars because, let's be real, Star Rail's content is easily doable with any unit. The only question is, how long does it take for a player to actually get there, right? Actually achieve 30 out of 30 Memory of Chaos. So for all purposes, I'm not saying that the units are bad, and any one of these units can help a player get to their goals as compared to without having these units, right? So starting with Himeko, she was memed on since 1.0 as one of the worst 5-star units, having also one of the worst 5-star signature light cones in the standard shop, but her usage is really coming through for this MOC due to the fire weak enemies, especially at Memory of Chaos 10 first half, right? Himeko's issue is not a lack of damage, it is more so a lack of content suited to a kit, because her follow-up attack and ultimate both excels against a high number of enemies. Right now, the current destruction meta is highly favored. We mostly only face 2 elites, we never ever face 3 elites, and we never ever face an enemy number more than 5 most of the time, right? Even if there are mobs that comes in groups of 5s, they are very easily destroyed. So right now, we simply don't have a single stage where we face more than 2 elites simultaneously, and in the future, who is to say miHoYo isn't going to throw in like 5 Kafkas in a single stage, or 3 true Swarm Stings in a single stage, right? With the inclusion of Topaz and now Gwen Ifen, a mono fire team comp is looking really good against fire weak stages, simply due to how well Asta, Topaz, and Himeko all synergize with one another. For now, between the abundance of limited DPS units and how strong they are, Himeko is comparatively lower in the bell curve until more content suited to Himeko is released in the future. So jumping to the second Honkai impacted character with Himeko, we will now be discussing Welt. Now, Welt had a really good run during the phases before Imbibitor Lunae being our only imaginary carry. And even though I have a very soft spot for Welt because I have used him since day 1, ever since Imbibitor Lunae's release, I simply cannot ignore the power difference between both of these units, right? Imbibitor Lunae is simply just way too strong to justify any of the newer players to use Welt over Imbibitor Lunae, other than husbando reasons. Nonetheless, Welt still remains as one of our only units with an AoE action value pushback on his ultimate, and his idolants are also really strong across all standard units. Since we're on this topic, in my opinion, the strongest Idolant 6 across all of the standard units right now is gonna be Clara, Welt, and Bronya. So just something to take note of. Right? The debuffs that Welt brings, they are still really good, which allows our entire team to squeeze in more actions against the enemy via speed debuff, imprison, as well as the action value pushback, right? Welt still remains as a really strong hyper carry, suitable for both single and AoE targets, especially for enemies with imaginary weakness. His build is also really flexible, being able to run a normal crit ratio hyper carry, or just go all in into speed and effect hit rate and energy for debuffs. But that being said, there is one big issue right now, which is we simply do not value indirect debuffs as much as direct debuffs. Now, what I mean by direct debuff is something like Pella, right? Silver Wolf, right? All these kind of defense downs and rest down that directly increase the amount of damage dealt. Granted that Welt also has vulnerability, which is increased damage taken. This is tied to his ultimate, which happens once every 3 turns. And if you're going to be using him as a debuffer, he's unlikely going to be using his skill every turn, which changes this into once every Fortens, so it's not a very high uptime. So why do we not prefer indirect debuffs like Welt's action value pushbacks and speed debuff, right? This is mainly because the enemies in the endgame content usually die extremely quickly to a hyper carry setup, as with most bosses averaging at 350,000 to 400,000 HP. When you see Inhibitor Lune, Sile, or even the newly released Jingliu's single ability hitting for almost 200,000 damage, the fight simply ends way too fast for indirect buffs such as Welt's action value pushback to benefit the entire team, right? There's nothing to push back if the enemy is already dead so soon. Nonetheless, players without Inhibitor Lune and need an imaginary carry should definitely invest in him. Next up, we have Jing Yuan's student, Yanqing. Now, for Yanqing, the damage output is definitely there, but unfortunately, Yanqing's kit is also one of the clunkiest and least comfortable amongst any 5-star, and with Jingliu's release, this further sealed his fate as one of the more underused 5-stars across any of the standard banner. Now, don't get me wrong, Yanqing had an incredible time to shine back in version 1.0 when we had no access to alternative DPS units, and the final stages of MOC, they were largely single target focused as well as having an ice weakness. So if you guys even remember, the earliest MOC clears in Honkai Star Rail back when the game started, they were all either using Sile's or Yanqing's. So whenever we need a stage with ice weakness and Yanqing needs to deal his tremendous amount of single target damage, he will definitely be able to hold his weight. Now, unfortunately, Honkai Star Rail is very clearly shifting away from the single target to multi-target meta, where destruction units are performing really well. And with the announcement of Argent, it seems that miHoYo is favoring more and more towards higher enemy count content. It's just very difficult for Yanqing to just only target the boss and just ignore all of the mobs, because nowadays, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, even mobs deal significant amounts of damage if left unattended. Yanqing's Soul Steel Sync is also one of the hardest trigger conditions to fulfill. Not only does activating his technique not activate Soul Steel Sync, why miHoYo, why, right? It also disappears the moment Yanqing takes a single bit of damage to his health pool. Now, in stages filled with multi-targets, wind shears, high enemy counts, and also area of effect damage, shields are essentially a must to ensure that Yanqing keeps this buff. Right, since March 7th shield draws higher aggression, Gepard really is the only suitable sustain we have for him currently. Going forward, unless miHoYo releases more single target content or more shielders that can provide Yanqing with decent shield without costing too much skill points, then Yanqing is unfortunately going to be outclassed by most 5-star carries in Honkai Star Rail. Still, if players obtain Yanqing, he's definitely viable in Ice Weak stages, especially with some lucky follow-up procs, which helps with the toughness bar reduction. And finally, after all that, we have Xianzhou's best doctor, Bailu. Despite the lack of cleanse, Bailu still fulfills the job really well as a sustained unit, capable of keeping our team alive via invigoration, a healthy heal from an ultimate, and an emergency revive in case things go wrong. Right, coupled with the damage reduction trace for invigoration, Bailu was one of the premier sustained units that everybody used to use to greatly reduce the pressure for our team for difficult content, especially when the game first started, before all the fancy new sustained units came out. Furthermore, being a HP scaling sustain also pushes Bailu slightly higher in the comfort department since she's inherently tanky, right? But that being said, the lack of cleanse definitely hurts Bailu to some extent, right? As more and more enemies are getting annoying crowd controls that can threaten our team, namely imprison, freeze, entanglement, and sometimes even the wind shear from choosing, it can start to hurt a lot. In high pressure scenarios, getting crowd control can easily cost a run if key units cannot. Like for example, you can't use their ultimates, you can't use their follow-ups, or they get pushed back at the wrong time, such as Bailu getting crowd control and your team is in the red, right? Or DPS getting crowd control when an ultimate could have otherwise killed a target. So ultimately, cleanse is not a must, but it definitely makes some stages much more manageable to deal with, especially in Memory of Chaos. And going forward into the future, if miHoYo just constantly release more and more crowd control stages, then Bailu's use is going to start to decline, considering the fact that almost every single one of our new sustains have some form of cleanse, right? After understanding the general analysis for all of the 7 5-star standard units, who should players use for their 300 out of 300 unit selector? In my perspective, if a player's account does not have Bronya, and they want to play a game such that they want to reach the end game as soon as possible, or they want to speed run to the end game, then getting a Bronya for the tier 300 selector is going to be an excellent choice. She really is the most universal and the strongest damage increase across almost every single DPS unit we have in the entire game. just because of how great an extrata mechanic is in a turn-based game. Other alternatives that you guys can consider is going to be Gepard. If you guys don't want to pull for any standard banner unit, getting a Gepard or even a Bailu can be really helpful, right? Ultimately, that's going to be up to you. And then if you want another DPS unit, Clara is going to be the most beginner-friendly DPS unit that anybody can just use right off the box. As long as you invest in Clara, you're not going to face any issues in the early run. And even right now in the end game, Clara definitely still holds her own, although granted that her damage output might not be as high as all of the new Destruction Hypercarry units, but she can definitely clear the endgame content for you guys. And considering the fact that you are going to be using hers from the start till the end, I think it is an excellent choice for investment value. And with that, we have come to the end of the 5-star standard pool unit analysis. Leave a comment on who's your favorite 5-star unit and let me know if you guys would like me to go through the standard 5-star alike cones. If you guys would like to engage in further discussions, feel free to check out my Discord, Pokke's Village, where we have a very active community talking about Honkai Star Rail on a daily basis. If you guys would like to check out my stream, that's going to be twitch.tv/MrPokke, where I stream 3 times a week. Schedule will be updated on Discord as well, right? And with that, we have come to the end of today's content, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.